Hello, and thank you for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and You. My name is Sylvia Black, licensed real estate broker with affordable homes and apartments. And I'm also licensed to preach and ordained as a minister, and I have my master's degree in sacred theological divinity. And I want to thank you for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and You, which airs every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7 p.m. right here on Time Warner Public Access TV Channel 20, and also Saturdays from 12:30 to 1. Today I would like to talk to you about a book I've written called The Story of Joseph, From the Pit to the Palace. And I would subtitle the message today will be The Blessings of Obedience. Joseph, From the Pit to the Palace, which is available on highwaytoheavenchurch.org, also lulu.com, also amazon.com, and also barnesandnobles.com. Okay, you can visit my YouTube address at sblack3001 at gmail.com. Well, actually, sblack3001 for my email. And for my YouTube address at sblack3001. And you can email me at sblack3001 at gmail.com. And again, we're talking about the blessings of obedience. And we're taking our story from Joseph. And this book is called Joseph, From the Pit to the Palace. Now, I do believe that a lot of times, in order for us to determine a lot of our problems that we're facing, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, it's important sometimes for us to go back just a bit. Not necessarily back, all the way to your great-grandparents. Maybe sometimes look at maybe your parents' life, but also to look back maybe a couple of years ago in your own life. Or maybe just as soon as perhaps even a month or a week ago, or even yesterday or that morning. And today is the first Sunday of the month of July. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Now, like I said, a lot of times I think that it is important that we go back a little bit in order to determine a lot of things in our lives. And as I had previously talked to you, and we're going to start off with a prayer actually that's going to be from my book, You Can't Curse What God Has Blessed, which is also available on highwaytoheavenchurch.org. And I talk about generational curses and generational blessings. Now, I mentioned that a lot of times that when a child has to struggle with sin, it's because the parents sinned. And they passed on that curse down to the child. Now, I have to suffer with my own sin. I'm not going to pay for the price of my parents' sins, because they have to pay the price for their own sin, and I thank God for that, But the parents have to pay the price for their own sins. They have to deal with their own sins. They'll be punished according to their sins, or they'll be forgiven for their sins, whichever God determines to be necessary. Now me, I'll have to suffer with sin as a child of a sinner, but it is now up to me to get it right. I have to deal with sin, and I have to struggle with sin. So now I have to make a choice whether I'm going to serve God or man. Okay, whether I'm going to cling to God and hate man or what have you. You can't serve two masters. You got to serve one or the other. So now it's going to be up to me. God gives us a choice. That's why Jesus died on the cross for us, so that we can have a choice as to who we're going to serve. So in this book, I go back to as far as Joseph's fathers when they were born, just to show you a little bit about what, to actually back up what I'm talking about. Okay, that's the bottom line to that. Now the book starts off, okay, and the story is found in the book of Genesis in the Bible. Okay, it starts off with the births of Esau and Jacob. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily go into detail about it, just enough to let you know. Okay, and as we know, Esau and Jacob were the sons of Abraham. Okay, now Abraham had found favor in God afterwards. Okay, he had got redemption after retribution. And God had told him and made promises to Abraham and told him that your descendants were going to be as numerous as the stars. So in essence, we are all descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, and so Isaac and Jacob was born. Okay, Esau sells his birthright. Okay, Jacob sent for a bowl of soup. Esau was out hunting, and Jacob told him, you want some soup, you got to sell me your birthright. Now, birthright is something that you're entitled to as a result of being born. Okay, now Esau sells his birthright for a bowl of soup, and the man can make a bowl of soup just as good as his brother can. Okay, then Isaac deceives Abimelech. Okay, Okay, and then like I said, this you can find the story in here in my book, Joseph from the Pit to the Palace, available on highwaytoheavenchurch.org or lulu.com. Okay, Isaac's covenant with Abimelech. Okay, now Jacob steals Esau's blessing. Okay, based on his mother Rebecca's instructions. Now you got to remember, your mama or your daddy may tell you to do something wrong, but you have your own mind whether you want to do it or not. If they tell you to do something wrong, you have a right to say no. Okay, yeah, you're gonna suffer for it probably, but you're gonna have to know that God is pleased with you for your decision, because now you're suffering as a slave to righteousness and not as a slave to sin. If a man asks you to do something wrong, if your mama, your daddy, your sister, your brother, your uncle, your aunt, your cousin, your niece, your nephew tell you, let's go rob a bank, and you go along with them, you made the decision to rob the bank, okay? So now you are out of covenant with God, and you're suffering as a slave to sin. If you decide to say, no, I'm not going to go rob the bank, and they still punish you anyway, because you did not rob the bank, okay, now you're suffering as a slave to righteousness, and God is pleased with you. You know the passage in the Bible in the 1 Peter, I believe it is, it says, don't be afraid as if something strange were happening to you, okay? Okay, well, do as your masters tell you to do. Give them the respect that God instructs you to give them, not necessarily that they deserve, because we know that they are probably not deserving of any of that, but God instructs us to be obedient to His word. And that's the title, The Blessings of Obedience here. God instructs us to be obedient to His word, and as a result of us being obedient to His word, God is pleased with us. And what does it mean when God is pleased with us? What does it mean when you are pleased with what your children do? Your children sweep up the house or they rake the yard like they're supposed to without you having to tell them. Oh, I'm so happy you did that. The average parent, me, I'll take you out to the movies. I'll treat you. Today is your day. Anything you want to do today, we can do it. And that's the way I reward my children. But a lot of people, and that's the way God, but see, God owns the whole world, so He can bless us with anything, our heart's desire. Okay? He can bless us with an abundance of riches and wealth. Okay? He can give us good success. He can give us extra years like He did with, who's the character? He gave him 15 more years. Okay? Now, Jacob flees to Padan because his brother Esau said he's going to kill him. You stole my birthright, bro. You know what I mean? And now I'm going to come after you. I'm going to get rid of you now because you did me wrong. Okay, so now Jacob has a dream, okay, at Bethel. The next morning Jacob got up very early. He took the stone that he had rested on his head against and set it upright as a memorial pillow. Then he poured olive oil all over it. Okay? He had a dream, and if you want to find out the details of that dream, get a copy of this book here. Now Jacob finally arrives at Padan. Okay, then Jacob hurried on, finally arriving at the land cast in the east. He saw a well in the distance, 3 flocks of sheep, and a goat laying on an open field beside it, waiting to be watered, but a heavy stone covering the mouth of the well. Okay, it was a custom here to wait for all the flocks to arrive before removing the stone and watering the animals. Afterward, the stone would be placed back over the mouth of the well. Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked, "Where are you from, my friends?" "And we are from Haran," they asked. "Do you know a man named Laban, a grandson of Nahor?" he said. "Yes, we do," they replied. "Is he doing well?" Jacob asked. "Yes, he's well," they answered. "Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the flock now." Okay, now Jacob marries Leah and Rachel, because we all know that Jacob wanted Rachel, but Leah was snuck in there by, his uncle was just as conniving as his mother. Because they're brothers and sisters, so they got the same blood in them, okay? Now Jacob didn't have to follow his mother's advice, but he did. Now Jacob's many children. Jacob has children. He has, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, He enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. So Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me." All the children that she had, she thought that her husband would love her, but I guess she didn't realize that she was a trick. Okay, and then finally, Rachel was still barren. So Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as his wife, and he slept with her. So now she's having all these children by his other wife. Now his servants are having children. And then finally, after by and by, Jacob's wealth increases, and then Rachel has 2 children. Okay, that's Joseph and Benjamin. Now Joseph and Benjamin are Jacob's and Rachel's biological children. Okay, the other children were considered stepbrothers, okay, to him because they were not born of Rachel. Okay, now Jacob flees from Laban because now I guess he must be sick of his mess, and he said, I'm getting out of here. You know, I come here for what I got. You tricked me, now it's time for me to go. So they made, Laban pursues Jacob, but then they make a covenant with one another. And Laban is satisfied with that, so he lets him go. Okay, they make a treaty with one another. Okay, now Esau's coming on the scene because remember Esau's last words was, I'm going to kill my brother for what he did to me. He stole my birthright and my blessing, and I'm going to get it. So now here comes Esau, and Jacob is afraid that he's coming back to fulfill what his promise. So he sends gifts to Esau, but that's not why Esau had come. Esau, I guess, realized that it was his mother that influenced him. And he said, you know what, I'm still blessed. You know, you can't curse me because of what the words that came out your mouth, because you have no authority to curse me, because if you could curse me, then you could bless yourself. So Esau probably came to the conclusion that says, hey, you can't curse me because I still have children, and I'm still blessed, and I'm still making money, and I'm still in the will of God. Now here Jacob wrestles with God. Okay, during the night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and his 2 servants' wives and his 11 sons and crossed the Jacob River. And after taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. When the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it in his socket. Then the man said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. But Jacob, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Okay? So now Jacob had a dream. He said, what is your name? He said, he replied, Jacob. Okay, his name was no longer Jacob. Now the man named him Israel. Okay, please tell me your name, Jacob said. Well, why do you want to know my name? Jacob replaced Peniel. It was the force of God, he said. Though I have seen God's face, yet my life has been spared. Now Jacob and Esau make peace. Okay, finally. And I talk about Jacob and Esau even though the story is about Joseph. Because the subtitle of this message is the blessings of obedience. Because if you look back at Jacob and Esau's life, if you look back at his father's life and his father-in-law and his uncle and his grandmother, you know, then you will find out, you know, why all this mess was happening to him. Now Joseph didn't do anything wrong. Joseph was a slave to righteousness, but his brothers were stepbrothers, had the maid's blood in them, had the stepmother's blood in them. Okay, Rachel, although we all know that Rachel wasn't right either. Rachel was, Jacob was his father, was Joseph's father. And Jacob was obedient to God. Even though he did things wrong in his life, he still had to pay for the price of his sins. Now Joseph is born, his biological son, and he loves the boy more than anything. We know that God tested him and whatnot. He says, you got to kill the boy. And he decided he was going to kill him, but then the angel said, no, don't kill him. I'm sure glad he wasn't hard of hearing, because God would have said, Jacob, didn't you hear me calling you, boy? He said, well, I didn't hear you, Lord. He said, well, can't you raise him back from the dead, you know? But he heard him, and he didn't, you know, he probably told him that this is what God had instructed me to do and whatnot, and they both accepted it as the word of the Lord. Now, we know that revenge was made against Shechem, okay, because Dinah, his daughter, was raped, okay. Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, okay, went to visit the young woman in the living area, okay, and she was raped by, and then they made a covenant with one another. Now Jacob returns to Bethel. Then God said to Jacob, get ready and move to Bethel and settle there, build an altar there to God who appeared to you, and when you fled from your brother Esau. Okay, so Jacob is having all of this stuff going on and whatnot in his life, but now Esau has children as well. The account of the descendants of Esau, also known as Edom. Esau married 2 young women from Canaan, Ada, daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Oholibamah, the daughter of Anna, the granddaughter of Zibiah, the Hivite. He also married his cousin Basemath, who was the daughter of Ishmael and the sister of Nebaioth. Adah gave birth to the son named Eliphaz for Esau. Basement gave birth to a son named Ruel. Halabah gave birth to the sons named Jehush, Jolan, and Korah, and all these sons were born of Esau in the land of Canaan. Okay. Now Joseph has dreams now. Remember, Joseph is born of Rachel, and Joseph and Benjamin are her biological sons. And Joseph is really happy that he finally has a biological son by his wife. And he treats his son with royalty, because you got to realize the other children are stepchildren. Even though they're my children, they're not my biological children, they're stepchildren. And I guess these boys really didn't understand that. You know, they figured that they were children nevertheless, but they had the maid's blood in them, or they had Leah's blood in them. And somehow they were conniving and deceitful, selfish and greedy. And while Joseph and Benjamin were treated with royalty, they were all treated with respect and love. But Joseph received special attention from his father, okay, because he was his first biological born son. Okay, now Joseph has dreams. Okay, Joseph was gifted with dreams, just like Jacob was gifted with dreams. Remember, Jacob had dreams? He had seen the face of God and his life was spared. Okay, so Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. Okay, this is the account of Jacob's family. Jacob had dreams. He says his brothers responded. He says, listen to this dream. He said, we were out in the field tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around it and bowed low before mine. Okay, and his brothers replied, so you think that you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. You know, he says, oh, here comes the dreamer. You know, they hated him. They didn't understand. They didn't have the same vision that Joseph had. So they plotted and planned to get rid of Joseph, and they was going to kill him. But then Reuben said, why not just sell him into slavery? Reuben was secretly planning on returning Joseph back to his father. But they threw him into Sisera, and by the time Reuben came back, he was already sold into